This is a crime story. The perpetrators are elusive. And their product? Seafood. In the U.S., we import 90% of our seafood, but our dinner comes at an unimaginable price.
This is a fishing industry that has been built on trafficked and forced labor.
We see murder, we see extortion, we see all different kinds of things.
One boat crewman was stabbed right in front of me and thrown into the water. For more than a year, I was beaten and kicked, and we got no medicine when we were sick.
Slavery is just the beginning. Of the 120 million tons of seafood humans catch every year, roughly a quarter is illegal, stolen from other countries' waters, or captured with outlawed methods.
This is smuggling, and it's criminal in many cases.
Some nations are fighting with fire, while eco-activists take matters into their own hands.
We found the bodies of 321 animals in just 24 hours.
It's making sure that the industry understands that we have this one planet, that our fisheries don't disappear.
Americans consume nearly 5 billion pounds of seafood every year. But what is the real cost? A journey through oceans of crime. Midnight in the Gulf of Thailand. Miles from shore, in the darkness, Captain Ron Campbell and his crew are just getting started. Ron's boat is 30 tons of battered wood and iron. The crewmen drape a big open net through the water, then cinch it closed to scoop up the fish.
Sometimes we can fish, and the boat earns easily $2,000 per night. But sometimes we don't get anything, barely $280 a night.
Americans import 90% of their seafood, roughly $1.5 billion worth every year from Thailand alone. That means much of what we consume in the U.S. is caught by workers like these on boats like this. On Ron's vessel, half his crew are Thai. The rest are immigrants.
Thais don't do it. They are sick of working in the sea and don't want to do it.
Small wonder. Workers may earn just $10 a day. That keeps prices cheap for us, but it's tough, dangerous work. And the industry has an even uglier side: slavery. Human rights groups say forced labor in the fishing industry is widespread. Captain Ron says it's common knowledge.
Sometimes they fool people to go work in the boats and hold them captive inside the boats. But my boat comes to shore every day, so we can't force people to work or enslave them. They have to be willing to work.
Cases where people do something to anger the captain, where they fail to perform, they are killed. They're killed and thrown overboard. And then
Phil Robertson is Deputy Director of Human Rights Watch Asia. He estimates that roughly 20% of the fishermen on Thai commercial boats are enslaved, though the Thai government insists those numbers have improved.
American consumers need to be aware that they could be consuming products made with forced labor if they're buying Thai seafood. They're supporting an industry that is still benefiting from the abuse and the exploitation of people who are not free to leave.
Ask him, is that similar to the vessels he used to fish on?
Min Nang is a former slave. He says he spent more than 5 years trapped and abused on Thai fishing boats. We met him in Yangon, Myanmar.
Whenever we were in port, they shackled me. They unlocked me only when the boat left. When the boat returned to shore, I had to unload the fish, and I got chained again on the front end of the boat, whether it was sunny or rainy.
Nang shows us scars. One where he says a captain stabbed him with a stingray tail.
Wow. So that was deep.
And another where his head was cracked with an iron pipe, a wound closed with 22 stitches by a fellow crewman.
Does he know what happened to his friend who helped treat him with the injury?
He felt like he was hopeless, and he was not being treated well by the Thai captain and supervisor. So finally, he killed himself by drinking something, and then I saw the body was thrown into the water.
Like many enslaved fishermen, Nang was smuggled into Thailand by crooked brokers who promised him a good job in a factory.
Instead of rolling up to the factory, they roll into a fishing port. You know, the guy gets out and he's in a warehouse. A couple young toughs come and control him. They lock him somewhere and he's done for. That's it. Next day, 2 days later, he's presented to a fishing boat. The fishing captain looks him over, offers a price, buys him, and he's on the boat.
Buys
him.
He buys the guy.
He buys the guy.
Men like Nang are often afraid to tell their stories, scared of powerful interests in the seafood industry. But we had help. A Thai-American scientist named Lisa Rende Taylor.
We have definitely met our share of fishermen who have seen their colleagues die, get murdered, commit suicide after feeling absolutely hopeless, and a number of different ways that they could be physically or mentally tortured.
Rende Taylor's organization, Isara Institute, fights human trafficking throughout Asia. It's a problem most commonly associated with Thailand's infamous sex industry.
What's your sense of the size of the migrant workers who are in the sex industry versus the seafood industry?
Look at the sizes of the industries. How many people around the world buy seafood? How many people could possibly buy sex in Thailand? I mean, what could the size of the sex traffic industry possibly be compared to seafood, garments, electronics, things like that?
We wanted a better sense of the brutality that feeds the American appetite for salmon, swordfish, and tuna. So Rende Taylor took us into rural Myanmar, through the kind of hard-scrabble countryside where many exploited workers come from.
This is a poor country. This is a hard place to make a living. And even though a lot of these people, they might not have even ever seen the sea before, but they hit the seas because they got to make money somehow.
In a small village, we met Ong Tu and Cha Chi, two men who spent years as modern-day slaves, trapped on Thai fishing boats by captains who wouldn't let them leave.
So if we confront them, we don't know what will happen. We may become jobless, or we may die.
Did he ever see anyone killed?
Yes, even on my boat. That person got killed by having a chain tied onto his feet and being thrown into the water.
Why don't they just try to escape?
They do. They do just try to escape. It's what happens. I mean, some people try to escape and they die. Some people try to escape and they get picked up by the authorities and put back on the boat. We have seen that plenty of times.
I tried to escape. The boat captain was a terrible person. He would beat us with a stingray tail or a lead pipe.
There's a greater realization, I think, amongst American consumers that products coming from Thailand have been tainted with forced labor. And the people who were on those boats catching that fish were trafficked. They were forced there. And they're suffering, in some cases, grievous physical harm.
It may seem like it's happening worlds away, but the illegal fishing crisis is as close as your kitchen table. The struggle to stop it, next.
Have you guys been here before? Okay, cool. Welcome.
In the dog-eat-dog world of New York City restaurants,
Tacos and bowl. Enjoy, guys.
Jordan Andino has found a winning recipe.
Are you guys ready?
He calls it Flip Siggy.
It's Filipino taqueria, sandwiches, tacos, bowls, burritos. Filipino love sprinkled all about.
What's your most popular dish?
My most popular dish here is poke.
Describe that. What is the poke?
So the poke bowl here is raw tuna served over rice, scallions, pickled onions, wontons, carrots, avocado, with a miso soy glaze all over the tuna and some sesame. It's really good, and it's also our best seller.
I think we get the poke bowl.
The poke bowl is such a hit, this tiny restaurant can go through 30 pounds of high-grade tuna a day.
$36.80, please.
Getting it is the easy part. What's harder is making sure it's not the product of a crime, whether it's caught using slave labor, stolen from protected waters, or captured in ways that threaten fish populations.
I can't keep track of that. Along this supply chain line, I'm wishing that and hoping that everyone that we get from is sustainably doing their job. Now, I would be remiss and I'd also be naive if I were to tell you that, yeah, it's perfect the entire way. I know that at times it's probably not. But I do my best and what I can on my end to make sure that it's sustainably caught.
Like the American consumer, he's at the mercy of a vast global supply chain, an often unknowable mix of legal and illegal. To help navigate it, he relies on this man.
Got some black sea bass over there. This is Arctic shark.
Jody Mead is a buyer at New York's legendary Fulton Fish Market.
I could tell that this is fresh from 5 feet away. I mean, the eyes are very clear. There's no murkiness in it.
The gills too.
Yeah, it's hard to touch. I mean, you push on a fresh fish, and it'll go in. It bounces right back.
Mead can see what's good, but to judge what's ethical or legal, he has to rely on the integrity of his sellers, just like Andino relies on him.
If you order a piece of fish from us, I'll look it up and I'll tell you exactly what boat it actually came out of, what part of it, the ocean, what ocean. We actually keep very fine records.
Mead says he trusts his partners here, but he has some help of his own.
This black sea bass, where are you guys getting those from?
Jed Fisk is an enforcement officer with the federal agency NOAA.
Today we're just checking the dealers here that have federal permits. We're checking for various fish, prohibited species, checking size limits. Chilean sea bass.
Fisk's patrol looks low-key, but federal fisheries enforcement is serious business. 15 miles away, at the port of Newark, New Jersey, agents from NOAA and U.S. Customs tear open a container filled with frozen fish from Thailand. James Casson is the assistant special agent in charge.
So this whole container should be one thing.
Should be flounder fillet, so we'll see.
They're looking for fraud. This shipment is fine, but seafood is often intentionally mislabeled, with cheaper types of fish being passed off as something more expensive.
This is smuggling, and it's criminal in many cases. This is fish, but it's worth money. It could be any other widget. Except in this case, in the Patagonian toothfish case, you're talking about $30, $40 retail a pound on the backside. Right. So you back that up, and everyone's taking their cut along the supply chain.
It's big business.
It's lucrative. It's huge business.
$3.5 billion worth of seafood ships into Newark and New York ports every year. And of the wild-caught fish, more than a quarter could be illegal.
There was a shipment of shrimp with cocaine in it a couple months ago,
Yes.
right?
Frozen shrimp. They broke the ice up, and they found heroin and cocaine, yes.
It's always a moving target. 2 weeks from now, it could be another species. It could be tuna. It could be anything.
A patchwork of law enforcement and environmentalists watch over a shadowy supply chain that extends across the globe. For the conscientious consumer, that means asking the right questions. For a contemporary retailer, that means knowing the answers.
So we have whole black sea bass, whole red snapper, porgies, and Spanish mackerel, all caught in the United States.
Carrie Brownstein is head of global seafood standards for Whole Foods Market. She says the key is knowing their suppliers.
We have a tremendous emphasis on traceability in our seafood sourcing, and we don't buy seafood from fisheries that are poorly managed or not even managed at all.
Reassuring words.
Where are you getting it from?
This is out of Iceland.
But ethical buyers like Jordan Andino still have to trust the system. So in that regard, you're in the same boat as the consumer walking around in the grocery store. You're at the mercy of that big supply chain out there.
I am. I guess the only difference is that there's more middlemen between the large format grocery store and the customer. My supply chain is a little bit shorter, but still, in the end, where we're both sourcing our stuff from, I'm not at the docks and neither are they, so I guess that puts us on the same footing.
Coming up, foreign workers confined to American fishing boats for years at a time. Labor abuse in our own backyard when we return. At the Honolulu Fish Auction, tuna is the catch of the day. In a matter of hours, these middlemen will buy 80,000 pounds of fish, much of it destined for supermarket shelves from New York to Los Angeles. This fish is caught in American waters by American-owned fishing boats. But here's the real hook. The crews on these boats aren't American. They're undocumented foreign workers, confined to their vessels for years at a time.
When you decide to come here, you accept that you'll be sad and lonely. You just have to accept that.
Min Tuc Le is 26 from Vietnam. He's worked these boats for more than 4 years. Now he lives on the Triple Dragon, which docks on Honolulu's Pier 17 behind this fence. We asked him how he feels about being barred from the United States.
A little sad. Sometimes you want to visit to know what it's all about.
The exploitation of workers in the seafood industry isn't limited to faraway places. It comes all the way to American shores. Here on the island of Oahu, Honolulu's tuna fleet takes advantage of an obscure legal loophole. Rather than using American labor, its 146 vessels are manned almost entirely by impoverished foreign workers who cannot step foot on U.S. soil. How long has he been on this boat?
I've been here 5 years.
5 years? Straight?
I figure I'll work 5 to 7 years.
This Vietnamese fisherman, who gave his name as Chow, got emotional when he talked about missing his wife and 5 children.
I just have to work to make money to support my wife and kids, for my kids to go to school. When I've made enough for that, that's when I can go home.
Chow's one of some 650 fishermen from Vietnam, Indonesia, and the Philippines who catch Hawaii's tuna. According to federal law, all U.S. flag vessels must have an American captain and crew. An exemption allows a foreign fisherman to work on a tuna boat, but it doesn't grant him a visa.
That individual either needs to be detained on board or removed from the United States.
As a result, the U.S. Customs and Border Patrol orders these men detained on the boats they work. Their travel documents are held by their captain. Most of the fishermen refuse to even speak with us if the captain was present. What's striking when you talk to these guys is they are constricted to this space right here. They can see America, but they can't go to America.
Well, you're working in the U.S., but you're not really working in the U.S.
You're contributing to the American economy that you can see through the bars of the fence that blocks you from getting to the other side.
Forrest O'Neill is a supervisor who helps oversee fishing operations here for the federal government. Ashley Watts used to work with him. They say Hawaii's floating labor force subverts the intent of U.S. law.
Are human beings being exploited?
I'm being paid $400 a month. I can't leave my work area. And if I become injured, I can be sent home with no money. Is that exploitation? I'm beholden to you because you hold my passport, and when you want to go fishing, I go fishing, and I have no ability to move on my own. Is that exploitation?
We spoke with dozens of fishermen on these piers who earn less than $1 an hour catching tuna that can sell for $50 a pound. Some get small commissions, but not all. American companies like Costco, Safeway, Marriott, and Nobu restaurants sell their fish. So does the Trump Hotel here.
On a normal day, we would work about 16 to 17 hours. When there's a lot of fish, then 18 to 19 hours.
Observers say conditions on the boats vary widely, but that only about half have toilets. Crewmen can sleep on the floor for weeks at a time, and bed bugs are ever present. Still, the fishermen are glad to have the work.
This is a better job than in Vietnam when you compare the salaries. I earned about $200 a month there, and here I got $500 for the same job when I first came.
Chow now makes about $1,000 a month, still just a third of what the average American would make for the same punishing work. Fisherman Roy Aquino from the Philippines says that's part of the problem.
If you think about it, the job is almost the same, but the pay is different.
What is the root cause of this problem in your assessment?
Greed.
Money.
It's greed.
You know, fishing is tough. If you want to talk about, fair wages and fair hours and 8-hour days, don't go on the water.
Jim Cook owns 5 tuna boats and a slew of fishing businesses. He makes no apologies for the pay or confinement of the crews and says they're free to sue.
Given that these guys might not speak English and they're also contained on the vessel, how would they have the option of doing something like filing a suit?
They all have telephones. They're all in Honolulu. And not to be disparaging, but you know how easy it is to get an attorney to file a suit? Hello? So it's just basically the same as if you were a U.S. fisherman.
I came from the East Coast. I came here because the regulations got so bad over there.
Richard Gallimore has 4 boats and mans them exclusively with foreign crews.
I got them because I have in trouble with U.S. crew. You get lawsuits because they first trip to go on a boat, they hurt their back. They didn't want to work. They come in after they get paid, they disappear for a week. With these guys, they're on the boat. They're here to work for their family.
But some of the undocumented fishermen we spoke with didn't know they have the right to go home whenever they want.
You can't just leave because you have a contract that you signed with them.
What? You tell me who they are. They know they can go home anytime they want.
But in an alien culture, in lockdown, that's not so easy. Min Tuk Lei doesn't even know the names of the captain or the owner of the boat he works on.
I don't ask. We call the owner Number 8. We don't know his real name. Same thing with the captain. We use his nickname, Uncle Number 6.
The owner and the captain come and go through the gate while the fishermen kill time, stuck in this peculiar no man's land.
The word of God is the will of God.
On some nights, they're allowed to step off the docks to pray together. A moment of peace for the men who feed the American taste for tuna. Coming up, when governments confront illegal fishing, it can start to look like a real war. The battle at sea, next. Seafood is big business. In the U.S., we import more than $18 billion worth of it every year, including the roughly 1/4 of the catch that's illegal.
Salmon, side right.
We may be the ones eating it, but trying to stop that illicit flood begins thousands of miles from home. Which is how we came to be on a warship in the Gulf of Thailand.
It's the first time I've ever framed a shot over a 50 caliber machine gun.
Lieutenant Tanadet of the Royal Thai Navy isn't looking for drug smugglers or terrorists, but illegal fishing boats.
How often do you run into trouble?
15 days a month.
About half the time?
Yeah.
Illegal fishing happens across the globe, but it's been especially rampant here in Thailand. It can mean stealing from other countries' waters, using banned equipment, or labor abuse, everything from slavery to murder. Patrols like this one are an effort to show Thailand is confronting a troubled industry, one with multi-billion-dollar connections to the U.S. market. Was this man's hand crushed catching your dinner?
How did he injure it?
He points at metal weights on a fishing net.
It's really heavy.
I called to the boss of this boat and tell him that we will bring the injured man to go to the hospital.
The lack of medical attention is bad enough, but something more sinister has caught the lieutenant's eye. A possible case of child labor.
I think his face is not more than 18.
You're talking about that boy right there with the yellow shoes on, right?
Yeah, I think he's really young. 15 or...
He doesn't look 18.
Yeah.
He claims he's 19 and has an ID card that seems to prove it. But a simple bartender's question trips him up.
Can you ask him what year he was born?
He said 19.
But can he say what year he was born?
He said he don't know.
So he's not sure about what year he was born, but the document says he's 19.
It's a lawless industry, and Thailand has been working hard to tame it. It's had to. In 2014 and 15, the U.S. went so far as to cite Thailand publicly as one of the worst offenders of forced labor and slavery.
These people have nowhere to go. You're essentially trapped in a cycle of working 18 to 22-hour days.
Phil Robertson is with Human Rights Watch Asia.
In some of the boats that have just been recently been coming in, because the Thai government has ordered all long-haul boats to come back to shore, men were on those boats for 5 or 6 years and had not seen land.
It's not just labor abuse. Thai fishing boats have been accused of plundering neighboring waters, and Indonesia, tired of encroachments, isn't taking it anymore. It's blowing up illegal vessels seized in its waters. Policing a shadowy supply chain that stretches from here all the way to the U.S. has proven difficult for the Thai seafood industry. It exports $7 billion worth of products every year, much of it from the port of Samut Sakhon. If you ever eat canned tuna, some of it almost certainly comes through here.
At this end, we have the de-skinning and the de-heading, so that's considered to be the dirtier part of the process.
Darian McBain is Director of Sustainable Development for Thai Union. You probably know their top brand, Chicken of the Sea. We talked to her in early 2016.
Approximately 1 in every 5 cans of tuna that are sold in the world are produced by Thai Union. So US audiences would be most familiar with Chicken of the Sea brand.
In recent years, Thai Union had bought seafood from fishing operations that were using slavery and forced labor. But McBain told us they were working to change that. For example, by tracing fish back to its source.
That's the vendor, that's the fishing vessel that it came from, this is the catch date, and that's which hatch on the vessel it came from.
Are there companies or suppliers out there that Thai Union has ceased to deal with because of their practices?
Yes. So to date, we have 17 suppliers that we have immediately terminated our relationships with because there was evidence of forced labor, child labor, or human trafficking.
This problem has existed for 15 or 20 years. So the fact that they just woke up and realized they had a problem, in and of itself is good, but what were they doing previously?
I would argue, how can it ever be too late? How can it ever be too late to start improving?
It's not easy to stop a crime wave. Ultimately, somebody still has to go out and look for the bad guys. Tonight, that's the lieutenant, between neglected and underage workers, he's seen enough. He orders the entire fishing vessel impounded and its crew detained. Coming up, chasing fish thieves to the farthest corners of the globe.
We found bodies of 321 animals in just 24 hours.
Eco-activists doing what governments will not when we return.
I'm going to come aboard and conduct a fisheries inspection today, okay?
Chances are the seafood you eat that comes from American waters is caught legally.
So this is 16 inches? It's fine. That'll keep a baby sea turtle from getting caught up in a dredge as it comes up from the seafloor.
Across the country, federal officers inspect ports, like this one in Newport News, Virginia, though they know they're outnumbered.
There's a lot of coastline, a lot of ports, a lot of boats, and a few of us.
That's in U.S. territorial waters. On the high seas, it's a different story. Out here, beyond the horizon, illegal fishing drives a black market worth $23 billion, and laying down the law often falls to vigilantes.
This place was full of life, and a fleet of ships had just come and begun to take whatever they could by using a banned form of fishing gear. And for multiple weeks, no one had really done anything about it. We found the bodies of 321 animals in just 24 hours. And that covered a spectrum of 12 species, from seals to dolphins to critically endangered southern bluefin tuna, various species of sharks.
They're emptying the oceans and jeopardizing the global food supply. Illegal actors aided and abetted by the unwitting American consumer. These crimes are almost never caught on camera, but this time would be different. Sid Chakravarty is captain of the Steve Irwin, the flagship of Sea Shepherd, an aggressive and sometimes controversial group known for its anti-whaling campaigns. He's got an unusual job, hunting fish poachers.
Most Americans would be horrified that the average tuna sandwich or the average salmon or the other fish that they're eating could possibly have come from a region halfway across the world but be laced with illegality and bad labor practices.
Docked in Perth, Australia, Sid was in a position to do something about it.
I came across a blog entry by a group in America called SkyTruth. SkyTruth creates a global map of which vessel is just where in real time. And they put out an entry saying that they had spotted 6 targets with attached smaller gear that seemed to be in a very unusual space and location in the Indian Ocean.
Despite international maritime agreements, the sheer size of the world's oceans means that most of them go unpoliced.
In this area?
Yeah. That's where this man comes in.
Yeah, it can be something like half my day is taken up by tracking down individual fishing vessels.
Bjorn Bergman, a Yale-educated biologist, patrols the oceans from an unlikely place, Shepherdstown in landlocked West Virginia. From here, half a dozen SkyTruth analysts monitor environmental crimes. In early 2016, a strange radio signal flashed on Bergman's screen.
And I noticed a fleet here in a pretty isolated part of the Indian Ocean.
What did you see?
Half a dozen vessels that were all identified by this fleet name, Fu1U.
Through the noise of 120,000 ocean-going ships, Bergman combs through the ones that are fishing and puts his finger on 6.
And at first we really had no idea what was going on.
Bergman zeroes in on the vessels, which are not registered to fish in the region. Halfway around the world, his blog entry gets Sid Chakravarty's attention.
I decided to take the Steve Irwin over and try and see just what this unusual activity is.
It's a long shot. Far from shipping lanes and commercial flight patterns, this is as close to nowhere as you can get. But at latitude 40 south, longitude 91 east, 8 days voyage from Australia, Sid finds the shadowy fleet, right where Bergman said it would be.
So these vessels turn out to be the Fuyuan U-71, 72, 73, 74, 75, and 76. They're all registered to the port of Fuzhou in China and are all flying the Chinese flag.
The next day, caught red-handed, one of the boats drops its net and flees. Sid sends in divers.
These are large-scale 60-meter drift net vessels, and the gear that they're deploying are over 10 to 15 kilometers in length. This is a very serious infraction of international law.
Below, the net has killed indiscriminately. Snagged by their fins or gills, fish struggle to escape.
That's when I realized that now we've got an obligation and a responsibility to not just document the vessels, but get into actually putting an end to their illegality.
The crew of the Steve Irwin starts hauling in the grim evidence.
Lights up.
And back in West Virginia, Bergman has spotted something new.
A cargo ship which is heading north.
Yes.
Bergman can trail suspicious vessels back in time. He spies these squiggles, the boats offloading their catch at sea, a practice called transshipping.
This was a refrigerated cargo ship which had spent about 2 weeks with this fleet and was going back to the coast of China.
Transshipping allows fishing boats to remain at sea for years at a time. Once the fish is on a mothership, determining who caught it and where is nearly impossible.
This is a way that fleets don't have to report exactly what they're catching.
So it's like money laundering, but with fish.
Yes.
All right, hauling.
Over 3 days,
Little shark coming.
Sid's crew pulls up miles of carnage.
I saw 120 sharks dead on the deck of the Steve Irwin.
Mangled fish, drowned mammals.
We found short-fin mako sharks, we found blue sharks, brown seals, common dolphins, swordfish, mola mola or sunfish. We found squid, albacore tuna, and we found a southern bluefin tuna, which is a critically endangered species of fish.
As they work, the fish pirates flee, silencing their radio signals.
The vessels have all gone dark.
All of these vessels disappeared from AIS.
They just turn off their AIS.
Right, exactly.
And vanishing into the expanse of the Indian Ocean. Coming up,
Chinese naval warship, this is the Steve Irwin.
The dramatic conclusion when we return.
All I know is that there's one vessel out there.
For 6 long weeks, Captain Sid Chakravarti has waited for a Chinese fishing fleet to tip its hand. He's with the conservation group Sea Shepherd and has already caught the Chinese poachers using illegal drift nets in the Indian Ocean. Now Sid is the hunter, and he thinks his prey has surfaced.
One beacon from the Fuyuan U-76 seemed to have been left on accidentally under deck, and that vessel's beacon every so often would make a contact with the satellite.
Bjorn Bergman spotted it too. In far-off West Virginia, Bergman uses signal data to track fish thieves. He'd been on the trail for months, but when Sid had intercepted them, they'd melted away into radio silence.
So this whole fleet in the South Indian Ocean disappears abruptly. And then all we are seeing is this one vessel which was broadcasting this crazy track in the Himalayas.
A ship in the middle of a mountain range.
So up here.
Okay.
And then...
I'm pretty sure that that's not a fishing
right.
vessel. Yeah, okay.
Bergman suspected the boat was spoofing, flipping coordinates to throw authorities off its trail.
So by inverting that apparent southerly course down here, you get the mirror image and you're able to plot out their actual course, is that right?
Yeah, exactly.
China's long-range fishing fleet is the largest on the planet, and according to Bergman, is a major perpetrator of illegal fishing. Sid estimates that these boats have been snaring 1,500 sharks a day and violating 11 international conventions.
I come across the Fuyuan U-76 in the afternoon.
I will be reporting your actions to the Chinese Bureau of Fisheries and the other authorities.
The Fuyuan U-76 makes a break for it, jettisoning its fishing gear as it flees.
For the first 3 days, she does her top speed of about 10.8 knots, and the Steve Irwin stays on the starboard quarter of the Fuyuan U-76.
So this whole time, they're out there acting in the real world, and you're here in West Virginia feeding them intelligence.
That's right.
Aboard his ship, the Steve Irwin, Sid hounds the boat through the Malacca Strait into the South China Sea, where the stakes are higher. Before long, Sid finds himself staring down the Chinese military.
Chinese naval warship, this is the Steve Irwin. She makes radio contact with 2 passing naval ships, and she accuses the Steve Irwin of being a pirate ship.
The warships back off, but the next day, the outlaw vessel plays a high seas game of chicken.
If you turn in and collide with my vessel, the responsibility will be yours.
Cutting across Sid's bow and risking a collision. For 17 days, the chase continues.
On the day that we last sighted her, she chose a port that had a big sea lane and a big river system and disappeared into it because the Steve Irwin could not follow the vessel into Chinese port waters.
After 5,000 nautical miles, the Fuyuan U-76 finally slips away and is gone.
Look a little bit further south here.
Later, Bjorn Bergman will find the shadowy fleet again, this time off the coast of Oman. Along with other poachers, human traffickers, and exploited crewmen, it will continue to ply an ocean of crime to satisfy our appetite. Scientists warn that, unchecked, overfishing will kill off whole species, and within a few decades, could contribute to a total collapse of the world's fisheries, and a future without seafood.